All right, I think we shall get started. I know there are still folks going to be joining us, and that's absolutely all right. We're so happy to have everyone here. Lots of familiar faces, and that's just fabulous. That's a great showing, so thank you. I'm Julie Perlin-Lee, the Executive Director of the Catalina Island Museum, and on behalf of our Board of Trustees and our staff, welcome to the virtual exhibition opening of Gayle Garner Roski, Journey to Titanic. Last August, while speaking with Bowers Museum President Peter Keller regarding our exhibition, Titanic, Real Artifacts, Real People, Real Stories, he casually mentioned to me, you know, Gayle painted Titanic. I needed no explanation as to who Gayle was. During the days when I worked at the Bowers Museum, Peter and Gayle and Ed Roski made several trips to the Pacific Islands together. And there, while Peter and Ed were busy collecting items for the museum, Gayle painted. Her vibrant watercolor sketches captured how she saw the world, full of beautiful people and fabulous landscapes. They were relaxed and accessible, little portals into a world out of reach for most of us. And it was hoped that one day those illustrations, those sketches would adorn the book of their adventures in the Pacific together. I also knew Gayle's work, her more formal work as well, was often exhibited at the California Art Club, at USC, her alma mater, where the Gayle Roski School of Art and Design is named in her honor, and in many other exhibitions throughout Southern California and beyond. Her work appears as illustrations in books that I've enjoyed sharing with my children, spanning many topics, including the spaceship Endeavour, LA's Chinatown, and the mysterious ancient bronze figures of Sanxingdui, China. In September, over lunch to discuss the exhibition plans for Journey to Titanic, I learned that Gayle had learned to scuba dive here on Catalina Island, right near where the casino building stands. I was thrilled to know about this Catalina connection, and I had exciting news to share with Gayle too. In researching for her show, we had confirmed with experts in the Titanic community that she was the first artist to paint Titanic in situ. To celebrate this first, we had a photograph of Gayle on her dive trip to Titanic donated to the Catalina Dive Exhibit, which is located in the casino buildings, just steps from where she learned to dive. And I hope that you will visit there on your next trip here to Catalina. In a devastating turn of events for her family, her friends, and the art world, we lost Gayle in October. The work in Journey to Titanic is the last of her creative outpouring, and just a fraction of the work that she's left for us to cherish and enjoy. I'm so grateful to the Roski family for entrusting the Catalina Island Museum with this exhibition and for giving us the opportunity to inspire others with all that is possible through art. Today, we have invited them, and we will speak with them later, and also art historian Jean Stern to speak about Gayle Roski. Jean is a nationally recognized authority on California Impressionism and has extensive experience as an author, curator, lecturer, and teacher. He was the founding and sole director of the Irvine Museum and has lent his expertise to countless projects, boards, and art programs in Southern California and beyond, all of which have garnered top awards from the French Ministry of Culture, the Plein Air Painters of America, and many others. There's a lovely picture of Jean and Gayle together. And please join me in welcoming Jean Stern. Welcome, Jean, and thank you.
Hello, everybody. I am honored and delighted and somewhat saddened to participate in this tribute to a lovely, wonderful, great artist, Gayle Garner Roski. I met Gayle at a California Art Club event about 25 years ago. She was very active in the club, and I was always eager to see what the artists were doing. So at this one event, I said hi and we started talking. And I had always admired her painting. I was fascinated by them. because if you go through an exhibition of the artists of the club, you'll see a lot of wonderful artists, but one artist always stuck out. One artist was different, and it had a completely unique feeling to them, and those were the works of Gayle Garner Roski. They were very well done, and they were unlike anything else that was on display. She loved to paint in watercolor, a medium she called a medium of magic. And it is a medium of magic. And most people think it's a childlike, you learn to draw, you learn to watercolor. But as a professional artist, she was very, very good at it. And watercolor is a difficult medium. It's a wet medium. So when your brush touches that paper, you never know where it's going to go. It's going to be soaked up by it. And it may make something that you really didn't plan to do. And the other thing about watercolor is it's very hard to correct. If you try to change it, it will show like a sore thumb and everybody know you goofed somewhere. So I was very impressed by her technique, but also by the content of her paintings. They were peaceful, they were inviting, they were uncomplicated. They were painted with a genuinely affectionate manner. And they were just so different and so gentle. When I looked at them, I felt very comfortable. I felt like there was nothing to worry about, no problematic events. It was just going back to childhood or feeling warm, feeling loved, and feeling with just absolute security around me. So we continued to see each other at art events, and at one of these events, about 20 years ago, I asked her, I said, "So Gayle, what did you do this summer?" And she said, "Oh, we went to the Titanic." And I thought, what do you mean you went to the Titanic? Oh, she said, we got into this Russian submersible, and it was only about 6 feet around. You really could barely stand up in it. There were no bathrooms, and it took hours to get down to 12,500 feet below sea level. And I later found out that she and her husband Ed were very adventurous. They climbed Kilimanjaro. They went diving in the South Seas. Remarkable people. And Gayle, she was so sweet, gentle, and here she is down at the Titanic. And I think she's the only artist, at least at the time, she was the only artist that actually went down there and painted the ruins of the Titanic from a porthole. So we became friends. And at one of our events, I was the executive director of the Irvine Museum collection at UC Irvine. I asked her to lend a painting, and she did. It was a beautiful watercolor, and it was a scene of Memorial Day. And it took place on the Pepperdine campus, this huge lawn, and it was covered with rows of American flags. And there were people all over the painting. There were men, women, there were kids. There was even a couple of dogs. And people that looked at that painting were fascinated by it. Again, I think it's because it looked so unlike anything else. It was a very unique style and a very unique approach. And people did love it. And I saw a lot of people taking pictures of it or having themselves in front of the painting or next to the painting, having their picture taken. So we became friends. And about 2 years ago, she asked if I wanted to write an introduction to her latest book, which is a book called The Gift of Los Angeles, which will be published sometime early next year. And the collection is a large number of paintings of various sites in Los Angeles. And I don't mean little landscape sites. I mean sites where people go, where kids go, where people enjoyed themselves, like the Hollywood Bowl, like Chinatown. And one of them she did was of the Irvine Museum. And she was very sweet and generous to include myself and my wife, Linda, in the painting. So I'm forever memorialized in a Gayle Garner Roski painting. So we talked about it. she invited Linda and me to lunch, and we talked at her house, and we got a tour of this fantastic collection. It was like a museum. I was very hesitant to walk through the halls because there were art everywhere. There was objects. It's amazing the interest that she and Ed had. It was a very, very intellectual pursuit of collecting art, and everything I saw was museum quality. So again, it was this great honor to work with her, to be with her, and to be included in one of her books, which turns out to be the last book that she did. She did a large number of books. A lot of them were children's books, but this is a collection of paintings she did of these beautiful and memorable sites of Los Angeles, some of which just remind her of her childhood, and by the same way, my childhood. I grew up in Los Angeles. So again, I am honored to be here. I was very sad. I cried when I heard of her passing. She was a beautiful, lovely, intellectual, a great artist, and we will all miss her. So thank you again for including me in this tribute.
We definitely all miss her. And please do watch for that book. Jean is correct. They are just incredible paintings filled with so many details of the city that we love, Los Angeles' greatest sights. And you'll be able to find more information about that on the Gayle Garner Roski website. So I'm excited to have a copy of my own. And Jean, thank you for participating in that project as well. I'm really excited that Reon Roski, and very grateful that Reon Roski has, the daughter of Gayle and Ned, will be participating with us today and showing us and giving us a walkthrough really of each and every painting in our exhibition, and telling us in really Gayle's words what it was like to go to Titanic, the whole journey to Titanic. So with that, please sit back and relax and watch as Reon Roski takes us through Gayle's eyes on her journey. Thank you.
Hello, I am Reon Roski, one of Gayle Garner Roski's 3 children. And on behalf of my family, I am delighted to participate in today's virtual opening of the Journey to the Titanic and share with you the story of my mother, Titanic adventure. Exploring the remains of the Titanic is an experience many people have dreamed about, but it's not something that Mom would ever have considered if not for the fact that she was married to a member of the Explorers Club, which promotes scientific exploration of land, sea, air, and space. My dad, Ed Roski, is a true explorer, and his ideas for vacations took my mom to some high altitudes in the depths of the world that she never imagined she would see firsthand. During my parents' nearly 60-year marriage, they climbed to the summit of Kilimanjaro, dove into the uncharted waters off of Papua New Guinea. They even rode camelback to Pushkar, India, with Sir Edmund Hillary. But their deep sea voyage with the great Russian oceanographer Anatoly Sagalevich was an adventure beyond compare. This journey began when my parents were attending the Explorers Club annual fundraising dinner in New York City. The organizers announced that they had a very special opportunity for a select few to take part in an expedition to explore the most famous shipwreck in history. Dad was so excited. He was on edge of his seat as they described the details of the Operation Titanic. He was determined to go. When it was mentioned that the trip would take place in September, he had an inspiring idea. He turned to my mom and said, "Gayle, I just thought about the most perfect thing to give you for your birthday." Now you need to understand that my mom actually had her eye on an amethyst brooch and matching earrings. But instead, for her 59th birthday, my father got exactly what he wanted. In retrospect, however, my mother realized that exploring the ruins of the Titanic was the best birthday gift my father had ever given her, and one of the greatest gifts she's received in her lifetime. The tragic tale of the unsinkable White Star liner captured the world's imagination, and our fascination has continued to this day. Not only has this famed ship been written about in countless books, it has also been blogged about on some 27,000 websites. It has been replayed in music, rearranged on stage, and of course, most famously rendered by the brilliant filmmaker James Cameron, who brought the epic to life on the big screen. My mother had seen both the movie and the Broadway musical of Titanic, but otherwise really didn't have any real historical perspectives on the Titanic when she and my father set off to sea. This became very apparent to her when she met her shipmates for the trip, many whom have encyclopedic knowledge of Titanic's history. They knew the names of every passenger, crew members, their ticket classes, and even their cabin numbers. Mom would also become absorbed in all things Titanic, but she began the journey with no preconceptions whatsoever. She really didn't know what to expect. And certainly, she did not expect to find a television camera crew waiting for her and my father on board. When my parents arrived to board the submersible at St. John's Harbor in Newfoundland, they learned that ABC would be filming the trip for the 2020 news program. They had no idea that they would be filmed during their time at sea. However, my mom didn't pay much attention to the TV crew. She had other things on her mind, like their half-mile trip to the bottom of the ocean. The 2020 segment aired shortly after my parents returned home from their trip. Mom then commented that had she stopped to consider that their expedition would be broadcast during prime time, she might put on some makeup or run a comb through her hair. Every trip my parents took during their marriage, Mom would have a sketchbook and paints in hand, so she could document their experiences by creating at least one painting a day. And their magnificent expedition to the Titanic was no different. The works on view in this exhibition at the Catalina Island Museum are the sketchbook paintings she created before, during, and after their descent into the depths of the North Atlantic Ocean on board the Russian Mir submersible. I will be sharing with you slides from her sketchbook of the Titanic journey, as well as some of my dad's photographs. Here are my parents in the official Operation Titanic photograph with their guide, Anatoly Tagalovich. My mom used this photo to create the title page for her journal of this trip. The first painting in her sketchbook was a self-portrait, which she created on the plane. She would later comment that she looked very serious in this painting, but thought it was just the fear setting in. Here is my father doing some in-flight research. The monitor in the background gave them updates of their position as they flew from Los Angeles to Newfoundland, where they would board the Russian ship that would take them to the Titanic site. This is the view of St. John's Harbor from their hotel window on the morning after they arrived. And this is the Keldysh, the research vessel, and their home for the next 10 days. And these are shipmates. In all, there were 20 passengers and 15 staff from 8 different countries. This is the charming Victorian town of St. John's, which my mom sketched from their stateroom window as they waited to leave the harbor. Before departing, my parents were called on deck for a briefing on emergency procedures. My mom sketched a lifeboat during the talk. And here is a photo of the submersible in which they would dive to the Titanic. It's referred to as the Mir, which means peace in Russian. Anatoly was one of the principal designers of the twin Mir submarines that were used. and he has piloted the Mirror on dives worldwide. In fact, he was the pilot of the Mirror used to film Titanic. Here is a sketch of the tail end on the Mirror. My parents had a chance to inspect the Mirror interior while it was still on deck, and they were given a briefing on what would take place the day of the dive. That's when Mom started to get a little nervous, but by then they were off. While not an ocean liner by any means, my mother thought the Keldysh looked majestic as she set out to sea. It wasn't until my parents were out in the middle of the ocean, after having seen the inside of that tiny submersible, that Mom finally understood just exactly what she had gotten herself into, or rather, what it was that she got for her birthday. And then they were informed that she and Dad would be going down first. That was more than a little daunting for her, although it also meant that the Mirror in which they would travel would be piloted by the great Anatoly Sagalevich. However, even the illustrious company did not ease her fears. They all still would be squeezed into a 6-foot by 6-foot submersible, 12,500 feet under the sea. More people have gone into space than have gone that deep underwater. My mom reasoned that this fact was probably because of the cramped quarters, and then she began to wonder if there would be enough oxygen. The night before their dive, my mother didn't sleep a wink. She kept thinking about how she was not going to be claustrophobic. 12 hours underwater in a 6-foot round titanium capsule. They were told that a hole in the Mirror, the size of a needle, one tiny little pinprint, and that titanium would spell disaster. My mother tried to recall her S training in the 70s. It's all in the mind, she told herself, practicing the breathing technique to help control her fear. But her biggest fear wasn't in her mind. More than anything else, what had her most concerned was not peeing for 12 hours. They were provided with little sandbags for that purpose, but they were fitted for male crew members. Somehow, by morning, Mom had summoned her courage and mustered her calm. She was suited up. She had her sketchbook and her provisions. She was given a box of lunch to take down with her, a sandwich and a box of orange juice. Though she thought to herself, she dare not drink it. Up on deck, the sun was shining, the cameras were rolling. My mom realized this is it. Here's Mom with a brave smile and fearless wave to the paparazzi. There was a lot of excitement because my parents were the first ones to go down. After being released, my mom remembered feeling like flotsam and jetsam, bobbing up and down on the water's surface. But then they sank down and the submersible engine started to purr as they powered away from the surface. Light from above slowly faded and they began the descent into the darkness. Mom was a diver, so she knew that after 200 feet, you lose all light. For the next 2.5 hours, the watery world outside the Mirror was nothing but pitch black. Inside, however, it was bright and warm and not uncomfortable. As they settled in, my mom sketched the little world inside the Mirror, including this portrait of Anatoly. Interestingly, my mother didn't feel as claustrophobic as she had feared. The inside of the submersible was painted a reddish orange, which she felt made it rather cozy, like it was inside a womb in the belly of the Atlantic. Because Mom had heard that their famed pilot like American jazz. She brought several CDs with her, and they listened to them throughout the underwater journey. While my mother was creating her sketchbook journal, my father was creating his own photo documentary, which shows more accurately what the womb of the mirror looked like and how little room there was inside their little womb. What can't be seen in the photo is how the sides of the mirror began to sweat as they descended. It was the condensation of the titanium as pressure changed. My mom was starting to sweat too, but later, as you will see, she had to put on a fleece sweatshirt. The temperature kept changing as they descended. As they neared the ocean floor, Dad readied his camera lens for the landscape outside, while Mom finished her sketch of the view from the inside the mirror. When the time arrives, my parents take their positions in front of the 3 portholes. As you can see, they are very small, just 5 inches in diameter. When they reach the bottom, they press their foreheads to the porthole glass as Anatoly turned on the mirror giant lights. And there they saw history come to life. Their view of the bow of the ship, as you can see from my dad's photographs, was amazing. They were so close to the hull that they might have been able to reach out and touch it. The underwater world of the Titanic felt surreal to my parents. It looked even more so because of the rusticles that clung to the ship's surface. They glowed with turquoise and green. Here is one of the ship's anchors. And the boiler of the Titanic's engine. As they glided through the wreckage, my mom said that she could feel the ghosts and all the lives that claimed by the sea. Above the smokestack is a pot used for cooking, an iron bench from one of the promenade decks, and 2 windows out of which passengers on the upper decks had a view of the Atlantic, much like the window in my parents' stateroom. Here is the bridge of the ship and a brass telemeter that was part of the steerage. Below were some plastic flowers by a plaque dedicated to the 1,500 passengers who perished on April 14, 1912. The ship had 2 propellers, each with 3 blades like this one, which was 60 feet high. This was not surprising, since at the time it was built, the Titanic was the largest man-made object in the world. Their mirror traveled under the gigantic propellers and over the hardware that once held the lifeboats. My parents were even able to look into Captain Smith's quarters. Amazingly, the toilet was still there. While Dad snapped the photo, Mom was painting it on paper. As an artist, what fascinated my mom the most was the fluorescent colors. It can't be seen in photographs. Even the fluorescent paint that my mother applied to her painting doesn't actually represent how it made pinks and turquoise sparkle. This is a porthole inhabited by albino crabs. There were colonies of fish and marine life everywhere. Here's a sketch of the propeller blades with albino fish and these bright pink tomb worms that inhabited the wreckage, which my mom found fascinating since the lack of light rendered all the other sea life albino white. As the mirror hovered over the mast, Mom sketched the crow's nest where the iceberg was first seen. After 5 hours of exploring the ruins of the Titanic, it was time for the mirror to head back to the ship. By that time, my mother was completely overwhelmed as she pushed back from the little porthole. So she had seen and now understood why the world's fascination with the Titanic had endured for so long. During the 3-hour ascent, she felt such gratitude for the privilege of witnessing it up close, where she could actually feel the life force that surrounded this great sunken legend. Getting the mirror back on board was quite a procedure. This is the bow of the mothership. On the stem is a wrench that can hoist the 25-foot fishing boat that was used to retrieve them. Clamps aboard the Keldysh were ready to lift the mirror from the sea. But first, a crew had to hook a cable to the mirror, which can be very difficult in the rough northern seas. And finally, they were back on board after 12 hours underwater. The sun overhead was a joyous sight for both my parents. For the next 5 days of the trip, my mother and dad were free to relax, enjoy themselves, and reflect upon all that they had seen. Mom had a lot of time to finish her sketches and paintings of the scenes aboard the ship. Here is the captain of the Keldysh on the ship's bridge. In front of the smokestack, Dad enjoyed the company of Fred McLaurin, who was the first to explore under the Arctic in a submarine. The Russian crew loved to play volleyball, and there was a game almost every afternoon, usually the crew on one side of the net and passengers on the other. My mom then realized that aside from being a talented photographer, my father was quite an expert volleyball player. They had the leisure to lounge. Dad read while Mom painted in their stateroom, the decor of which was vintage early 1960s. And the shelves of the ship's library were lined with every conceivable book and film about the Titanic. On board, they ate meals on the original Titanic third-class china. This is a still life of their tea time service. The seas remained calm over the next several days, and all 20 passengers completed their dives. The Keldysh then headed back to St. John's, where they packed their bags, and then, all too soon, they were aboard the plane and on their way home. On the return flight, Mom could close her eyes so she could relive all of the magical moments of their Titanic adventure. Memories which she said stayed with her for days, weeks, years, decades to follow. For my mom, there were so many unforgettable vistas that were visible through the porthole of her memory. But what was most remarkable was in the deep darkness below, the ghostly beauty of the Titanic herself. For even grounded in the eerie quiet on the ocean floor, she is forever gloriously afloat in our imagination. Thank you for allowing me to share my mother's story about Operation Titanic with you. I hope that you've had the chance to visit the museum, or soon will be able to, and see the exhibit in person. Thank you.
Thank you, Reon. That was so beautifully done and fabulous to see all that footage, all of it. And of course, Gayle's work up close. I know that I have questions, and I'm sure other people do as well. And we're going to have that chance. In just a moment, we're going to head into our museum's gallery and to see the installation with our director of exhibitions, Johnny Sampson. But just as a reminder, if you have a question for Reon, for Ed, who's here today and was with Gayle, for Jean, or for anyone here at the museum, please go ahead and enter it into your chat feature so I can help make sure we get your question asked and answered. And with that, again, thanks for being here, and to all of our members and all of you who graciously donated as well to help keep our museum afloat at this time. So with that, Johnny Sampson, please take it away.
Hi there, everybody. Thank you, Julie, for the introduction. Johnny Sampson, Director of Exhibitions here at the museum. And it's been such a delight getting to work with Gayle to bring this here. During this time, obviously, with the museum mostly closed to the public, we were able to quickly and nimbly change things and change where we had her work planned. And so I am excited that now even from our lobby in the store, anybody that comes in the museum can see her work. So why don't we just take it away, and I will give you a tour of the Titanic. Here we're in the lobby, heading in. Gosh, it's just amazing what we've done. We have some of the museum kids there. We'll get back to that in a second. We were able to use her signature, which in itself is a work of art. And sorry for my phone, it seems to be changing the colors a little bit. Oh, there we go. Okay. So yeah, once again, she starts off, as Reon was saying about, actually, let me just give you a quick little spin so you can see the whole room. That's actually one of the things I love about this space, is that from one vantage point, you get to get a snapshot of her entire trip. Here, let me come in here real quick. We actually have, this is one of her paint sets that she used in her travels. And from the Operation Titanic expedition, we have the logbook here, which was given to each of the participants. And you can see in the bottom right-hand corner, let me get in there a little bit, her and Ed from their first day. So yeah, we have, as we can't allow everybody in, we do have some museum kids, some of the children of the staff that have come into the space, just to be inspired by Gayle's work and kind of jot down what inspires them and what brings them joy. I think that's the Cowboys. I think that was the Cowboy football team, as a matter of fact. Oh, it's like I'm trying to cheat on his test. Any case, so here once again, we have this beautiful room that is completely dedicated to her trip here. Yeah, I'm gonna just start here. So here we have, like, as Reon was saying, Gayle used this work as a way to address, her fear. That was, the title of that piece was "I Am Afraid," and then that other one was "Ed is Relaxed." I love the way she has this, wit and tenderness with her works. And I know we've gone through each one of these just a moment ago, so I'll go quickly more to give you just an idea of the space. She worked on these frames. After we first met, she started working on these frames. So you see the original sketch in the middle, and then she did this added border and then had these put into the acrylic, which is just a beautiful, beautiful presentation. And also this all happened, after we had even discussed doing the show, is when she went back to create these. And as Reon was mentioning, the color, here she was so fascinated by the fluorescent pink tube worms in front of that 60-foot propeller. And you'll see in all of these works, this it's almost an adoration of color. We also have the 2020 Barbara Walters video here, so anybody can hear.
Down to the Titanic.
Yeah. Let me spin around. I'll give you the rest of the tour. Once again, as the mirror is pulled up, but just her color, her sense of wonder, I think, is what really comes across. The adventure and the joy. And the bridge again. It's just people, resting on the Titanic, and yet she makes that into something that's so powerful. This is where she's wearing, that passenger's wearing the blue diamond from the Titanic movie. I think she was tickled that you could buy one of those. And once again, here in their stateroom, just the tenderness that Ed is captured in right there. Ah. And again, she's painting her own self-portrait with her in the paints, and those borders around. Once again, she added those just recently for this show. Here we have her backpack and her hat. And then that flight home. Once again, I'm thrilled to be a part of this. I'm thrilled that I got to meet her. She's such a wonderful and powerful source, and just her energy and joy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Johnny. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Someone has asked how long the exhibition will be here, and it will be here for at least 1 year's time. And we've had to do, we're so grateful to bring that exhibition into our downstairs space, knowing that more people will see it there in case restrictions make it more and more difficult for us to allow people here. So we were grateful to be able to do that. And again, if you have questions, please go ahead and put them in the chat box. And thank you for your very nice comments. Ed will answer some questions, and I know I have some, but I just wanted to say, if you notice that last picture, that painting that Johnny showed, the airplane window home, and that amazing border she put in at the end, which puts like an oblong shape around the plane window, bringing it even more to light, a portal around a portal. I just so fabulous. And I even had to check with to make sure that Gayle did all that work and created all the new titles and all the beautiful framing basically in 1 month's time. I was just blown away with how quickly she was able to work and how amazing she perfectly matched the colors. That work was produced 20 years ago, and it looks like it was all created at the same time. Absolutely amazing. So Dave Dolan, you can go ahead and unmute yourself if you have a question. I think Dave Dolan, if you have a question, please go ahead and ask.
Oh, I just want to make the comment that in 2009, Gayle Roski gave the keynote speech to our West Coast annual dinner for the Explorers Club at the Bowers Museum at a time when we also gave an award to Anatoly Sagalevich. But she made these images that were just shown today were shared with that audience, and it was a wonderful experience. And everybody was involved. So I just recognize that you have this exhibit going for about a year, which is time enough that it'd be safe to travel. And as the chair of the Southern California chapter, we look forward to doing a field trip out to visit your museum in this excellent exhibit.
Thanks, Dave. Great to see you. And of course, you're welcome anytime. And Robert Ronis has a question too, probably for Ed.
How long was the dive from leaving the ship to re-embarking?
About 13 hours.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you. Yeah. And gosh, I have so many questions for you too. You know, we have so much Titanic here at the museum right now. We have the artifacts in one room and then Gayle's beautiful paintings in the next. But this is kind of a silly question, but it's one that's been on my mind because I need to know if it's the artist's eye or it really happened. The propeller blade is 60 feet tall. How big is that albino white fish? Did you see an enormous fish out there?
No, I really can't remember. It was interesting to see how, you know, there was lack of color in a lot of the fishes. And also, some of the fish down there, they don't need eyes. There's nothing to see. So it was a little bit different.
Very bizarre. Thank you. Jim Brown, I know you have a question. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, question for Ed. I'm just curious if there were any significant problems encountered in the submersible during the trip.
Actually, none. It was really they actually, there's two submersibles. One goes down first, and the next one follows in about an hour afterwards, so that they're both underwater around the ships at the same time, because there is cables that are out and stuff like this, and stuff, gets caught. But we had actually no problems at all. It was very, very smooth, and of course, they made the excitement of being down there on the Titanic, and then knowing, looking at some of the stuff like the grand staircase, going down in that and coming up, and different things around. And then between the ship, the bow and the stern is about maybe a half a mile or so. So it's going through the debris field and seeing what's out in the debris field. There was a lot of bottles of wine around that stuff, and it was quite interesting.
Well, what an incredible life experience. And gosh, you are so generous to share these with us. It's unbelievable.
Thank you.
Well, I have a question while we're at it here. The openings were big enough for your submersible to get in and kind of poke around inside?
No, just where the grand staircase was the one. Otherwise, you couldn't go in.
Couldn't go in. Okay. So this was all what was exposed.
That was, it was quite interesting. And of course, we all, saw the movies that came out, and we could actually down in the area where the actual cars were, because of course in those days when they traveled, they had to bring their own cars. They didn't have Avis or budget or Hertz and stuff like this. But so we could go in and see into sort of portholes and things like this, but really couldn't get in there.
Got it.
And nobody really wanted to, because
I would
banged up something.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jim and Joyce Brown. And I recall a funny story about Gayle learning to scuba dive here. I didn't mention at the top of the program, but maybe now is a good time to share that story. She actually learned to dive because you were taking the whole family diving.
Right.
And told her she had to learn to dive if she was to follow along.
We were going down the Great Barrier Reef, and she needed to get certified like the rest of us. Everybody else was certified and stuff. She had avoided it for a long time, so we went out to Catalina. She went through the normal classes and everything like this to do an open water dive. And we, like Catalina, we went in the water, and of course the current came up. Okay. And we all got, down about a half a mile, and had to cling on a rock and hold ourselves before the dive boat could come around and pick us up. But even with that experience, she was able to keep it up and keep diving.
And just on the heels of that, I think that someone has mentioned, and I think it's a great comment. We know you two went on amazing adventures, many amazing adventures, and certainly had to overcome some fears. And we know that Gayle very openly talked about overcoming those fears. But just in general, could you give us some words on just nurturing that kind of explorer's spirit within ourselves, and what does it take to, get out and just take the risk? Sometimes it takes that first step once you get into it and see whether it's, climbing or diving or whatever it is that you're exploring, or in the jungles or whatever. I think it's just, for all of us, it was taking that first step, and all of a sudden, with the curiosity of what's around the corner, what's next. So that's why I think we really got into it. Absolutely, thank you. This question might be best directed towards Reon or Jean. The Gift to Los Angeles paintings, can you remind us, will they be exhibited somewhere together?
I presume it will be somewhere. But so there's a website, and it will be on my mom's website. And I think that there's still will be newsletters coming out from it. Beverly's in charge of all that. And, but I don't know for sure what.
Okay, great, great. Well, we will be
Sorry.
watching. No, not at all. We will be watching for that. We will keep our eye on the website for the book.
But I do want to say thank you. Thank you so much for honoring my mom and her artwork and having this exhibit. And I remember her, you know, doing those borders just months before she passed away when she was ill, and it being her last works of art. I mean, those borders are the last thing that she did. And it just, you know, I keep tearing up watching this whole presentation today. And also I love just swiping and seeing who's on it and seeing all her friends and my friends and family friends that have joined us. And I am so grateful. And thank you so much for joining in and listening to the story. And you all did such an amazing job putting it together. I hadn't seen it all together, and it was phenomenal. Thank you for the great honor of my mom. And thank you, Dad, for
Thanks, Brian.
Anyway, I just wanted to let everybody know that there are plans to have exhibitions of Gayle's Los Angeles series. You know, one of the issues we're facing right now is we don't know when we're going to open up. But there are plans. There's a plan at doing one at USC, and there's another venue that's considering it. So we will make sure everybody knows. If you sign up for Gayle's newsletter on her website, we will keep you up to date on plans regarding the book and any exhibitions of Los Angeles.
Well, I think with that, I don't see any other questions popping up. So I want just to thank everybody who joined today and everyone who participated. It was a wonderful, wonderful program to put together. I can't.
And you did a beautiful job.
Oh, thanks, Ed. I just can't wait to have you all here. You know, we will get you all here.
Right.
And in the meantime, you can imagine what it's like to walk through that gallery. It just is so alive. And it was fabulous to have our kids in there drawing, and we intend to get lots of kids in there and adults, as a matter of fact, to be able to use art to draw and express themselves and to overcome their fears. And anyway, again, thank you so much. We recorded this program for you. We'll send it to you all in the coming days so you can look back on it and watch it again. And in the meantime, thank you for being here. We wish you all the best and a very, very happy Thanksgiving. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Julie.